First, let me state, well, thank you for the introduction, Diane, is that I am an art historian, not a liturgist. I'm a liturgist by need, by circumstance, because of my work with John Plummer on the 1982 exhibition catalog, The Last Flowering. Dr. Stutzman has shown you how you identify uses, actual uses. I'm going to talk about a database that I built based on work by John Plummer in the 1970s, going way back, that was analog and on paper, and that I have sought to the best of my ability to digitize. And Plummer called what he was after, he called beyond use. So you've heard about how Hours of the Virgin, Office of the Dead, and calendars can be analyzed, whether with absolute confidence or maybe not so much confidence in certain instances. But just because a text is written to be used in a specific diocese, collegiate church, or monastic house, does not guarantee that it was written there too. This is especially true for books of hours written for the widely favored uses of Paris in France and of Rome throughout Europe. The steadily waxing popularity of Rome use as the 15th century gave way to the 16th makes localizations increasingly difficult. To circumvent this problem, John Plummer, my Dr. Vater, began in the 1970s to record by hand the entirety of 4 relatively prolix texts found in most books of hours, critically for which there are no established liturgical uses. They are the litanies that follow the 7 penitential psalms, and 2 prayers known from their incipits as the Obsecrote and O Intemerata, the latter of the 2 known in both short and long versions. The purpose of this exercise was to identify scribal habits or choices within those 3 texts that might prove to be peculiar to specific centers or regions. And it was John Plummer who named the project Beyond Use. By 1981, when Plummer began writing the catalog for The Last Flowering, his 1982 exhibition hosted by the Morgan Library in New York City, he had recorded those 3 texts in full or in part, but overwhelmingly in full, in 274 books of hours in North American and European collections. While working with him on The Last Flowering as his Man Friday, I guess, I came to recognize the value for localization of those 3 texts. In response, I made a photocopy of his recordings on paper with his permission and began recording those texts myself in every manuscript book of hours that I studied from 1982 onward. In 2014, I decided to digitize his and my handwritten recordings for an online database, a project I completed and was launched online in 2016. As of this moment, my database, which will be my topic today, contains the readings from fully 1,100, mostly 15th and early 16th century French and Southern Netherlandish manuscripts, overwhelmingly books of hours, from North American and European collections. I would like now to introduce Mmmonk participants to that database and to show what it can and cannot do. You have on your screen, I hope, since I'm partly blind here and that I don't see any of you in the top bar function, Mac doesn't seem to allow that. The opening page for the database, the URL for which is at the upper left-hand corner, plus the HTTPS ... as well. I want first to acknowledge that this is John Plummer's idea. I enlarged it I got technical assistance from a great guy here at Sewanee named David Seiler, and from one of the computer science students, class of 13. And this launch was supported by this Lounsbury Foundation. I retired in 2019 and have gotten virtually no tech support whatsoever from the university. Once you're retired, you don't exist anymore, I'm sorry to say. And so there are many shortcomings to the database, and I will acknowledge them as I go along. And before we leave the title page here or the opening panel, note that my email address is here and you can contact me with any questions you might have. So this is home. And then in the top bar, we have a list. You have, for example, here, you have a history and description of the database, a brief summary of which I've already given to you. You can also search by individual texts, and keep in mind that this database has only the litanies at the end of the 7 penitential psalms, and then the secretae and 2 versions, short and long. Then, well, my blog has virtually nothing in it. I have to admit, I've not worked in it too much. So let's go back home. And now let's look at all manuscripts alphabetically, which I think is the most important place to start. First, I admit that I was never able, before I lost IT help, to create an index of abbreviations. But if you have any questions as you work through this list, in some cases, as Amiens and such make pretty clear, if you need more information, you just click on it. And this gives you what I call a data panel. And here for the Missal of Charles de Neufchâtel, and also brief, very summary bibliography. And notes are often important. Here, for example, there are no final prayers, which is quite unusual, but this is not, in fact, a book of hours. It is a missal. If the book interests me and I study it in person and it has the litanies, I record them even if they're not in a book of hours. I think the more data, the merrier. And while you will note that there are, if you go back to this list, that there are really close to 1,240 indicated here, there are duplications. So for example, those letters, JP, indicate that those are his recordings, and in many instances, I made a recording myself over the years, and you can very quickly, spot these as you work your way down. Other ways to look for manuscripts are by where they are today, by the institution that, first the country, then location, by location, then repository, which will give you this list if you're looking to see if I recorded something in the Beinecke or in the Durazzo Justiniani collection. There's only one of those, by the way, folks, sorry. And then by shelf mark, which is possibly more confusing, except that it's useful with regard to manuscripts I've recorded at Sotheby's of London or Christie's of London. And that's probably the least useful. But I think the most useful is alphabetical. So let's now turn to the individual texts. The way this works is that's not what I want. What I really want is to find an alphabetical list of the litanies. In all the books that I have seen, these are all another thing to note, I have not cataloged manuscripts in Dutch or in French here. I have kept them exclusively to Latin. The idea, it would be wonderful to build a beyond use for Dutch manuscripts, but of course, the variations in spelling, and this was simply something I could not tackle. So these are all of the litanies that I have seen. It's a very short list, as you can see, and the numbers in gray at the front are in fact the number as those readings were recorded first on paper by Plummer and myself, and then added to by me after his retirement in 1989. And as you will see, the usefulness of this is seeing just how many books have this standard opening. And put bluntly, it's all of them. One doesn't learn too much from that. So if we back up, and the best way to get moved through my database is to use the forward and backwards arrows in your browser. Ones that I sort of know instinctively which readings are unusual. And this comes from simply having looked at these for so long, sometimes to the point where my head is spun. This one is weird. And Omnis Sancti Ordine Super Norum Civium appears in the Hours of Thibaut de Luxembourg, Amiens, 1166, a book from the southern Netherlands, and Waddesdon 6, which is also Amiens. So two Amiens and one book that is also much later, obviously 1500. So this is a way to find out how unusual or how local, in some instances, are these readings. I don't know what happened there. And so you just go through this and you determine what is exceptionally unusual. But the litany list is short. This is a very small number of readings. So let's go back another panel and go to individual texts. The apostles list is also very short. You can also get them numerically, although I don't think that that's useful. There's also this. You can actually get a list of manuscripts recorded with any of the litany texts of Secro Te or O Intemerata. And as always, if you need to know more about the book or are unsure as to what my makeshift abbreviation means, then just click on it. Now, this is an interesting one. One doesn't see an Hours of the Virgin for Saint Riquier very often or anything like this. Just a passing comment. So manuscripts by apostles, let's go back again, and let's go to the alphabetical list. This too is relatively short, yet there are strange things here. For example, an apostles list that features Nathaniel. Same manuscript, I recorded it, Mr. Plummer recorded it too, and it's a Paris book of about 1430-40. Let me actually, before I proceed farther, let me take a look at individual texts and talk about them a little bit. Of course, this is basically a giant suffrage. You are appealing to God, the Virgin, and the highest orders of the angels. You then appeal to the apostles. Then you appeal to the martyrs, and the number, of course, varies dramatically. Then the confessors, then the virgins. And yes, I know that's sexist, but this is the order they come in. Then the ab petitions. You are supplicating, asking to be defended from certain things. Please, I want to be defended from this. And then per petitions through Jesus's sacrifices, so that then versicles and responses, and then final litany prayers. You go from the powerhouses through the saints in order of their apparent importance, and then, but you have a purpose. I want to be defended from these things. Through these your works, O Lord, so that these things will happen, so that just a quick summary of how the litanies work. I usually call this the litanies writ short, and all of this, the litanies writ long, which conclude finally with final prayers. Back to individual texts. And, oh, they're here. Don't even know my own database, for shame. Martyrs, alphabetical list of martyrs. Now, returning to Dr. Stutzman's presentation for a moment, if you wonder how local are certain saints, you know, one can read often in descriptions from dealers' catalogs about how a book of ours has Genevieve of Paris in the calendar or litanies, and that this therefore suggests an origin in Paris. Well, Let's go back again and go to the virgins and find out just how many books of hours that I have recorded contain Genevieve. And there's also a variant. If you click your way through these, you will find that not all of them are from Paris in any name, stretch, or form. She is absolutely everywhere. And this is a way, in a sense, a way of checking. Again, let me note that this is a growing list. The more books I put in, or should there be a successor to me, when I finally pop my clogs, then that continue this, then there will be more and more. And the more you have in, the more confident you can be about conclusions that you might come to, even if those conclusions are tentative. So let's go to the top, go back to individual texts, and go to the martyrs. The same here is, let's look at the alphabetical list of martyrs. I don't have to tell you that there are hundreds and hundreds of these. Some of them are extremely rare. Others are quite universal or typical of a region. This one appears only in one book. This, I should note, is the only Latin book of hours for the use of cologne that I have ever crossed in my visits to libraries. So when I saw this, I immediately put it in because I knew this would give me possibly some idea of what one might expect in a book of hours for the use of cologne. I know of very few books of hours for use in Germany. There are ones translated into German, but there's still very few. If one then goes to the martyrs, and I'm just using this as an example here, there are some saints that I have never seen, literally never. This is their order they appear in the manuscript before the period, and this is the number of times they appear. So if you're looking for marginal or regional or weird, this is your best bet. And here, Nabor, the martyr, also occurs in, of all things, one of the big Bedford manuscripts, 141. Others, though, like Ewald, Ephyli, are extremely rare as martyrs. And this is a way of sort of gauging the rarity of these individual saints. It goes beyond simply that Grotefend says, therefore, they are feasted in this place, that, or just maybe one place. This enables you to really narrow it down tightly, very tightly. How rare are these? And this is a way of getting an idea about that. So let's go back one, see what we find in how many unusual confessors they might be. And, well, Cunibert and Heribert I've never seen in a French or Southern Netherlandish book of hours, that's for sure. Nor Anno, nor Swickberte. So these are ways to use the database to find, okay, I have this saint. Where else in the batch of books? And again, it's a selection of books that is biased in favor of books made in France and the Southern Netherlands in the 15th and early 16th century. It's a bias that reflects my scholarly work as an art historian. You can quickly get an idea. Now, virgins. Not a single one that is extremely rare. So this is one of the ways you can use this database. But let's go back to my list of individual texts and get to things like ab petitions, per and ud petitions. These alphabetical list. This list is pretty long. There are a lot that are very close and similar, to one another. That is, they're just slight variations. Let's now actually choose a manuscript. I think this gives you an idea of how you use the database. And I apologize for the fact that there isn't a for example, you have to often click back or forward to find the useful data. But there is, I'm afraid, without help, there's not too much I can really do about that. One other saint that might be in terms of, I've now pointed out really unusual saints, but let's actually go to a confessor whose name suggests that he would be a Besançon saint, Claudius of Besançon, called, in fact, and that is numerical, we want alphabetic, sorry. And that is Claudius. How unusual is he? He comes under Claudii. He appears in 70 manuscripts. And just looking here at the top, Abbeville is from Saint-Riquier. And and I'm doing this off the top of my head, Brussels 1290 is a Parisian book. And you can just keep going on through. He does appear, not surprisingly, in Amiens manuscripts. Auckland is one. Also in books for Burgundy, that's Book of Hours for Burgundy. If you want to know that, of course, again, always click on the name and you will come up with the data. Another way you can, of course, search these books is that you can display use of the Hours of the Virgin only. You can show and you can search in all these different kinds of ways. And I'll be the first to admit that it's not always that easy. To give you an example, Hanno Weismann, who is at the HRT and whom Dr. Stutzman will surely know well, wrote to me once and asked, how can I determine how many books of hours in your database have readings, that is, case ending or gender endings that identify that the reader is a woman? And I thought about it. And to enable him to do this, and it can be done, I had to create a PDF with something like 13 screen saves in order to lead him through the steps that would enable him to do this. And there are often ways around, but in other cases, there aren't ways around. It's just difficult, to do some things. And I'm stressing here the things that are, in effect, the easiest to do. So Claudius is not really a local saint. He is a regional saint. And indeed, to look at just some of these entries, it's clear that by region, we're talking about a pretty broad stretch of territory. And so that is one way to see how local really is this saint. And this can also, of course, be really determined by simply going through the manuscript that you're interested in and seeing, clicking on each individual saint. I'd like now, given the time, to actually, having shown some of the mechanics, is to talk about how the database can be used in another way besides separating strictly local saints and textual readings from regional ones. And I think I've given a fair idea of how one can do that. The thing that may be more significant, certainly for art historians, indeed, I think for text people as well, readings peculiar to specific regions can be used to establish patterns of textual dissemination, sometimes across considerable geographic distances. As Dr. Stutzman noted, there are calendars in Books of Hours, which is, as noted already, a quasi-liturgical book. There are calendars that have a saint for every day of the year, and sometimes they look completely cosmetic, i.e. red, blue, gold, if it's an important saint. I've even seen late books where it's red, blue, gold, red, blue, gold, red, blue, gold. You cannot, from that, ascertain which saints are indeed considered high grading in the place for which that book was destined. That is simply, you cannot determine that from that. There's also the phenomena of what Mr. Plummer used to call a composite calendar. Usually in France, it's a calendar, often full with a saint for each day, based on a Paris calendar that then, let's say the book is being produced for a Western French reader, say Tours, user, say Tours. The person drafting the calendar will have, I would imagine these were probably guides, written down guides to, for a Tours book, you add these saints at these specific dates. But otherwise, it's a Paris calendar. And because they tend to retain saints for Paris that really are largely Parisian. So this is a frustrating, calendars are frustrating in this regard, in that they're often simply Paris calendars that are enlarged, or rather have shoved in at key spots major Parisian saints local saints, say Arras or Besançon or anywhere in the Champagne, anywhere that would that the local user would expect to see. The rest is kind of, to a greater or lesser degree, just filler. And so this is where my database, I think, is useful, because the texts I'm recording, that is litanies and the Obsequioteon and Temerata, which I will not be speaking of today, in large part, and you can ask me about this in the question period, I'm still completely dissatisfied with the search engines as they exist now. I will touch on it briefly, but it's been a source of extraordinary frustration for me ever since the database was launched, that I can't get the tech help to get this to work properly. So let me choose two codices that I'd like to look at. Both were written in southeastern France. Of this, there can be no doubt. One for the Archdiocese of Lyon, the other for the Archdiocese of Besançon. And these were, of course, contiguous archdioceses. But they were then illuminated by northern French or southern Netherlandish artisans. The first, let's go alphabetically, is a manuscript that flummoxed Mr. Plummer when he included it in the last flowering. It was at the time of the exhibition. It was in a private collection in Chicago, that of Everett and Anne McNear, and it was purchased not long after the last flowering. I was sent to fetch it from the McNear collection around 1986 or 87. It goes by the number of M1066. Textually, Hours of the Virgin are for Lyon. Office of the Dead is for Lyon. The calendar is strange. It has a mix of Amiens, Paris, and Lyon's saints. And in his entry for the last flowering, Mr. Plummer could not decide whether it was written in Lyon and then sent to Amiens, and we'll see this style-wise in just a moment, or whether it was, in fact, painted in Lyon by artisans who came, there are two artists in the book, who came to the south, to Lyon, to work. So let's go through some of the texts, if I may. Clearly, you've got classic Lyon saints: Telesphore, Bonitas, Photinus, Trophimus, who is actually really, I have to be careful, he's really more for Arles, but southern France. And then Irenaeus, Bishop of Lyons, and Anamundus, also a Bishop of Lyons. I am working now on a book on Besançon manuscripts, which some people have described as a movable feast, forever moving forward, but I am closing in on it. And for the text for regional calendars, which I also did in my book of 2016, the one, and actually two books of mine did this. What blows me away about Lyons is they had more bishop saints than you could shake a stick at. They were awash in bishop saints. I mean, they were overflowing, loaded, and you get a sense of this here in the martyrs, but you get an even better sense of it, I suspect, in the confessors, where you have, no, actually, it is in the martyrs. No, César, yeah. Elpide, yes. So there are these confessors. So let's go down further through the next text, going back to the data page. Um, there are, to judge from these numbers, no strictly really local versions. App petitions. All of these are more or less pretty common. Let's take a look here, and you will have, of course, many of these are for Lyon's use, self-evidently. That one is Amiens, this one, but these, not all of these are. That is Provence. It's really, those app petitions are not particularly useful. And if I haven't mentioned it, let me state that in many cases, the data is, you can't draw anything from the data. In some cases you can, in some cases you can't, or you cannot prudently draw from the data. You can recklessly do it, but it's probably not a very good idea because it's really kind of not honest. Per petitions, again, these are all reasonably common, save this one, in which case now, well, that of course is a Dutch manuscript. So you have to really click, if you don't know the books really based on the numbers, and I would not expect it. I know them because I catalog these books, so I often have them back in my memory hoard. You need to click on them. Let's now go, though, to the UT petitions. The UT petitions are behemoth, by which I mean I believe there are close to, I think it's 600 or 700 of them now. And they're exceptionally useful for this kind of work. And remember that these petitions are in the litany. There is no set use. There are scribal habits there for different regions, but there is no use per se. Here's one of them, although this isn't the other's more informative. The first one is for Lyon. Second one is for Lyon, as you would expect. Again, Lyon. And then 1066, our subject manuscript, to which we'll turn in a moment. Another one, actually, maybe they all are for Lyon. Hang on. No, Châlons-en-Champagne, and that, I don't think there's any doubt about that. And this is another wonderful Lyon book, which I think more people should take a look at. It just fell outside the work that Elizabeth Buren did in her wonderful monograph that really starts, unfortunately, in 1480. How about, okay, and then let's go back one more step. This one. And every single one of these is for Lyon. This is a Lyon's scribal habit. And then onward to, none of these are particularly unusual. Let's see what we have in versicles and responses. Well, yeah, it appears in this, the only place I've seen this is in that book. Remember, always, this is the only one I have seen. Others may have seen them, but at least you can get an idea of how unusual it is. Rare, by which I mean. Final prayers. Gaudiant Afuise. Gold screw. I don't think this is going to be local. No, that's also, no, these two are both Bruges manuscripts and then Morgan 1066. So if Cyril, I think is, I don't see his name, could, Evelyn, could you have the IT fellow put up the, for from my PDF, if you'd be so kind.
It's already done.
Okay, good. I can't see it. This is the book 1066, and you have two hands, both of which are certainly either Northern French or Southern Netherlandish. If you could have him go to panel 2, please. Is it there?
Yes.
Is it? It is. Okay, let me look at mine. Exactly. So here's the trick. If there were other Lyon's manuscripts with miniatures in these styles, and if you're on panel 2, look at that landscape. The styles are somehow connected to the Kuwaiti V master and or to very, very sophisticated Bedford followers or someone like the Mansell master. But I've never been able to find either of these exact hands in another manuscript. And there are no Lyons manuscripts with this specific style. From this, I think it's safe to conclude that M1066 was sent up to the southern Netherlands or northern France, illuminated and sent back to Lyon where it was written. So it was not illuminated in Lyon. It was written in Lyon, but it was then sent, in fact, back to a Lyon's reader, because had these artists been spent any amount of time in Lyon, the likelihood would have been we'd see other books by them. Okay, let me go now to my second manuscript. And I better remind myself, I know which one it is, yes, alphabetically. And it is under Basel highlights. Yes, the Fauquier Hours.
Greg, you will have
Yes.
to start sharing again.
Okay. All right. Yes, I'm sorry about that. I was in the wrong place. Share. Share. Do you have it?
Yes.
You have it now. Good. Okay, there we go. So this book appeared several times in the mid-50s. It is now what passed through the shop of young Günther, which gave me the opportunity to catalog it. And it is a book that, again, appears to have been written for use in Amiens. Well, I'm sorry, in Besançon, for the Hours of the Virgin, Office of the Dead, and calendars. But let us move on. Let me see what we can learn from some of the other texts in terms of whether it was in fact written from where the artists worked, which is the northern France, probably the region of Amiens or the Artois. And I'm now forgetting, in fact, whether that was where the indications are. Here let me read my notes quickly. I'm looking here now for readings that are exclusive to the Besançon region. None in there. But how about this one? No, that actually is not. So here, no, these are from the southern, a larger range of regions. I'm afraid since I can't see everything at the same time, I'm maybe a little bit, final prayers. Angelum tuum sanctum nobis hic requiem propitius. Amiens, I'm sorry, Besançon, 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 Besançon. Yeah, 16th century Besançon, Besançon. This, however, is a little trickier. This one is from the Lorraine. Besançon, 196 is, okay, it's from, actually, it is probably painted in Besançon by the Saluces master, Antoine de Launay. Besançon, 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 Besançon. Besançon, Besançon. So with one exception from the neighboring region of the Lorraine, it's a book obviously in the Yale Library. This is a prayer I have only seen in all my manuscripts in Besançon books. If now you could flip now to panel 3, please. And I'll let me know, Eveline, when it's up.
It's up.
Good, okay. The books in fact, seems to have 3 stops. It was written probably in Besançon, given especially that prayer, which is a Besançon giveaway, that as far as I am aware. It then seems to have found its way to the Champagne, where you see now on my panel 3, the 2 miniatures that were then painted there in the style of the Walters 219 master. And I think they might have been, let me qualify this by noting that 1420s Besançon styles are clearly derived from Champagne artists of the 1420s, like the master of Walters 219. But the proof that the book was then moved on, panel 4, please, if you would. The painter is panel 4 up?
Yes.
Good, good. the giveaway that that book really did then move on to the southern Netherlands or northern France. It was not, in fact, painted by a artist who then it was then sent back to Besançon or somewhere else, is the fact that the second artist, whom is somehow associated with the Mansell master, is one of the most seminal sources of influence on an artist I wrote a monograph on in 2000, the master of the Ghent privileges. When I wrote that book in 2000, the Fauquier Hours was completely out of reach. I had no idea where it was, nor did Susie Nash when she wrote about the book in her 1999 monograph on Amiens painting. But once the book surfaced and I was able to get images from Monsieur sehr geehrter Herr Jungunther, entschuldigen Sie mir, it was absolutely clear that the artist worked somewhere in the border region between southern Netherlands and France, because all the way through the art of the Ghent privileges master, you see these very direct borrowings. Could I have panel 5, please? Let me know when it's up.
It's up.
You can also see another one of these very obvious derivations from this book. And this, of course, this artist, the Ghent privileges master, worked, well, he moved. He was Ghent. He worked in Tournai. He seems also to have painted books for Mons that had Montois style borders, one of which is now in panel 5. And if that could be now taken down, and I'll just go back to me, and there we are. And this is what the database can do at its best. There are other things it cannot do, but I hope that gives you an idea of what it can do. And it's always my hope, of course, that one day I will be able to fix, especially the Obsecroteano and Temerata, and make it more usable. But it does, I believe, give a window into where things were written based on texts that have no orthodox versions. And that's it. I also see we're approaching question time.